if Keir Starmer has been lying to his wife, doesn't that also mean he will lie to the country? And in fact, we have seen lots of evidence that he lied during the election campaign.
I mean, I mean, that's a difficult one to say because, and I mean, you know what Westminster's like with affairs. It's a pretty common thing. But does he lie? Is he dishonest? I mean, there is absolutely no doubt this is a dishonest man.
He really hates this country, doesn't he? Within 3 months, Starmer has proven to the world he has no belief in Britain remaining a force for good around the globe. Davos over Westminster, remember, they were his words. Today's complete capitulation over the Chagos Islands is indicative of the woke mind virus that now runs through the UK's government and civil service, and the unintended consequences of letting this sort of man be in power. Although disturbingly today, number 10 is just relieved that the outrage is over a policy decision rather than Starmer's increasingly futile bid to cover up the big secrets haunting his troubled personal life. Nigel Farage, who should be Prime Minister, raged at Starmer. Giving up the Chagos Islands is a strategic disaster. Our American allies will be furious and Beijing delighted. Labour are making the world a more dangerous place. And I agree. Ceding sovereignty to Mauritius while paying them for the privilege is nuts. And of course, it's down to woke pressure that we just must surrender the UK's last colony in Africa. Well, you know what that means is next, right? You know it. Demands for reparations that would destroy our economy forever. And for once, the three Tory leadership frontrunners were united. Robert Jenrick fumed, "It's taken 3 months for Starmer to surrender Britain's strategic interests. This is a dangerous capitulation that will hand our territory to an ally of Beijing." James Cleverly ranted, "Weak, weak, weak. Labour lied to get into office, said they'd be whiter than white, said they wouldn't put up taxes, said they'd stand up to the EU, said they'd be patriotic. All lies." And Kemi Badenoch scolded, 2 days after Israel is attacked directly by Iran, Labour have put our vital base in the Indian Ocean at risk. Anyone who has been paying attention to the geopolitical climate will understand the strategic necessity of these islands. Labour has either not been paying attention or doesn't care. Either way, this decision weakens UK influence across the world. But of course, Labour man Jonathan Powell, the special envoy for British Indian Ocean Territory negotiations, was backing his civil service cronies on the British Bashing Corporation this afternoon.
The Conservative former minister, Robert Jenrick, says it's taken 3 months for Starmer to surrender Britain's strategic interests. His rival for the leadership of the Conservative Party, James Cleverly, posted on social media, "Weak, weak, weak." They said they'd stand up to the EU, said they'd be patriotic, all lies. Similarly, another rival, Tom Tugendhat, has described it as shameful. How do you respond to that?
Well, I do think these comments from the Tory leadership candidates are a bit silly. I mean, James Cleverly was leading these negotiations not that many months ago with the Mauritian government. The reason the British government started negotiating with the Mauritians was because of the law cases. We lost a law case in the International Criminal, the ICJ, and then we lost another one in the Law of the Sea Tribunal. And legal advice was clear that we were not going to be able to sustain our position. So that previous government started a negotiation. What this government has done is been able to conclude it because that government managed to lose the trust of the Mauritian government during the process. So for the people who were involved in that negotiation to start criticising the outcome, something they couldn't achieve, is absolutely ludicrous.
But perhaps it was because they didn't want this form of deal that's been struck.
No, it's not because of that. The negotiators who've been working on this are the same civil servants all the way through. It's because they are criticising it because they want to try and score points in their desperate attempt to win the leadership.
The Conservative...
As if they are. We are trying to protect our United Kingdom, and making a decision like this over British sovereignty when Parliament isn't even sitting to debate it is quite frankly revoltingly anti-democratic. And former Northern Ireland First Minister Arlene Foster agreed, writing on X, "This has been disgracefully announced when Parliament is not sitting. Those of us who care about the British overseas territories, all of them, will be pursuing this appalling lack of accountability." And former Home Secretary Suella Braverman targeted Britain's idiotic Foreign Secretary Looney Lammy, as I call him, posting, "This is a shameful decision. Starmer's reckless capitulation over the Chagos Islands severely undermines UK national security. We all knew Lammy was weak, but now it's official. He's China's useless idiot too. A dark day for our country's sovereignty." Meanwhile, Starmer's government is already collapsing under the weight of its own sleaze, despite claiming they were going to clean the whole damn thing up. Remember those days? Downing Street, triggered by my reports on how the MSM has been covering up Starmer's big secret about the shape of his family and state of his marriage, with this bombshell revelation from Guido Fawkes boss Paul Staines on yesterday's Outspoken raising the temperature. Or are you under pressure legally not to reveal more?
Well, we've both been in the game a long time. You know the rules. If you can't stand it up completely, you can't run the story. So we have a name, as do the Mail and the Telegraph. We have a birth certificate, and people have been looking into it. People have been journalists have contacted the family. So it's in play, and a lot of people do know it.
Lord Ali is under investigation. Starmer is returning £6,000 of so-called donations. And now we learn Angela Rayner's little trip to the Ibiza disco to let her hair down wasn't as innocent as she tried to make out on Sly News.
I take my job really seriously and what I do, and I work, and I'm always in Parliament, and I'm always doing what needs to be done, and I'll continue to do that. But I also believe, as a former trade
What time of the night was this? I mean, how did you keep... I would have been in bed by that time.
Oh, Fisher's a really, really great guy. I've known Fisher for a number of years, and I just think you've got to have downtime as well. Everybody has to have downtime, but I do take my job really seriously, and I like to talk about what I'm doing to help other people.
I'm not criticising you. I just wondered what you thought about the uproar.
At times, people like to look at that element, or yes, I'm working class. I like a dance. I like dance music. I got criticised for going to the opera.
Oh, isn't she just so innocent? Guess what? Rayner accepted £836 worth of hospitality, with a US company paying for that one night in the disco booth, according to Dame Andrea Jenkins. Can you believe that? Hashtag Labour freeloading, Andrea says. Now, a real working class hero, Nadine Dorris, was furious. She wrote, "This line from Rayner annoys me so much. As she took nearly £1,000 worth of freebies, she gives working class people a bad name." And Nadine is right, of course. There is nothing working class about being a complete and utter champagne socialist freeloader. Meanwhile, the left are now all of a sudden deciding that prime ministers shouldn't be forced out by media hysteria, despite doing exactly that to both Boris Johnson and Liz Truss.
News. It's the same thing that's happening here, and ultimately I think it's this idea that we just keep flipping prime ministers and getting people out, which hamstrung the Tories and looks like it could end up hamstringing Labour, and it's a very depressing way of attempting to do politics.
Do you think it will end up like that, Rebecca? Do you think this could literally lead to Sir Keir Starmer having to step down at some point in the next 6 to 12 months?
I hope not, but then Boris Johnson stepped down over basically having a bit of cake. Like, this is ridiculous. People seem to think that because they're a bit cross about something that someone has done, they can, derail the progress of the country. And whether you like them or not, this turbulence is disastrous. The same person in charge for more than 2 years would be a real improvement for whoever the person is at this point. So I think people have got this idea that everything has to be fair and everything has to be, and that if they don't like something, they can just sort of cancel them in the same way that you would an influencer. But you can't just unfollow the Prime Minister or block the Prime Minister. And I think not liking it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong.
Sorry, Rebecca Reed, you sanctimonious fool. It's too late for that. Your side set the rules. And let me tell you, Labour is hiding more secrets than the BBC's paedophile safe. And now it's time for today's Uncancelled Interview. And it is absolutely wonderful to be joined for the first time on Outspoken today by a brilliant guest, who've appeared on my former show. The filmmaker, conservationist and former Royal Marine James Glancy, he recently directed his first feature film, Afghanistan, about the collapse of the country in 2021. It premiered at the Chagos Islands Festival in 2023, so last year, but it will be available to you later this month on Substack. And James Glancy, great to have you here. Goodness me, James, we're just giving up the Chagos Islands without even a debate. Can you believe it?
I can't believe he's done this right before with Parliament not sitting. I mean, it just seems like an act of cowardice. Secondly, they didn't put it in their manifesto that they were going to do this. They knew it was going to be an issue, so they kind of slept this. They snuck this in. But you know, there is an issue here about what would be the best way of governing these types of territories. Is it handing it over to Mauritius, or is it keeping it as a British protectorate or British overseas territory? And I'm going to give you an example which is going to blow the minds of the sort of left-wing government that we have in, who talks about being environmentalist, about their green credentials. So Mauritius, if you look at the waters, the lagoons, and the coral reefs, over 50% of it is badly damaged. They overfish their waters. They're involved in shark finning. Mauritius is probably one of the worst examples of looking after marine life. We are handing back the world's largest marine protected area to Mauritius. So Britain made the Chagos Islands a marine protected area. So it's one of the largest.
Oh no, we just seem to have lost James Glancy. We will come back to him hopefully very shortly. But my view on this decision, of course, is that it's indicative of what is going to happen much, much more with Labour. And it's a very slippery slope, you know, because think of the people who were putting the pressure on over this. It's the same people who want us, James. We just lost you there for a moment, but I was just saying, James, the people who have put the pressure on over this decision are the same people who want us to start paying reparations, something that would bankrupt us forever.
But did you get my piece there? I mean, this is beneficial to the Chinese, but
yes,
they will start fishing those waters heavily. So it's just ironic how Labour goes on about being a sort of green party. They're not. This is a disaster for the environment. This is a strategic disaster for Britain. Okay, we get to keep Diego Garcia, the military base there, but ultimately Mauritius is going to have far more control over that. And Mauritius has trade agreements with China. So this plays massively to the Chinese. I think fundamentally it's un-British, it's unpatriotic of the Labour government. And it's sickening to show how bad they've been in 3 months and to think we've got 5 more years of this Labour government.
But James, can we just be honest about this? They have no pride in the United Kingdom. Lammy was the same person that compared Brexiteers to the Nazis. In fact, he said Brexiteers were worse than the Nazis. He's now our foreign secretary. Keir Starmer is the prime minister who said he preferred Davos to Westminster. And isn't this the danger when you get dangerous globalists in charge of your country? They do not believe in borders. They do not believe in sovereignty. And people might think this is dramatic, but they do not believe in the United Kingdom.
Well, when Labour came to power in 1997, they outsourced a lot of our decision-making to foreign bodies, whether that was the European Union, whether that was the International Criminal Court, which incidentally the USA didn't join. And they are allowing a decision made by the ICJ, which I believe was it 2019 or just a few years ago, which was non-binding. So we don't have to follow this, which is ICJ is part of the UN, which we know isn't impartial anymore, which is heavily leaned upon by China and a number of nations, a non-binding ruling, and they've implemented. It's absolutely disgraceful. But Labour have form for giving away power to other institutions, taking away power from Parliament, from the elected members in Parliament, and giving it away. And I really fear this is what Keir is going to be doing, giving power away from Britain and undermining Britain's strength and security.
But first, every day subtle changes occur in our bodies, often going unnoticed. It's called inflammagene, a chronic low-growth inflammation that deteriorates our health as we get older. And it is more than just a sign of aging. It's a key contributor to health issues like cardiovascular disease, dementia and depression, and physical decline. It continually weakens the body's resistance, turning minor infections into severe and impacting mental health and cognitive function. Now, inflammagene significantly diminishes both quality of life and independence. Proper diet, exercise and sleep can only get you so far. So that's why I take Clean Being by Verso. It contains ingredients targeted to fight off and help prevent inflammagene. Research shows that these ingredients clean out damaged cells in the body that affect healthy cells, reduce inflammation, protect against oxidative stress, and improve conditions like cardiovascular diseases and neurological conditions. After taking Clean Bean for some time, on a personal level, I've noticed less joint pain, increased energy, better mood, and clearer skin. I can think better, I don't get as sick as I did before, and these are all benefits of reduced inflammation. Plus, Verso ensures transparency and quality by publishing third-party testing results for each batch they produce, so you know you're getting exactly what you pay for. So click the link in the description on YouTube or Rumble, or head on over to buy.ver.so and use the coupon code Outspoken at checkout to save 15% on your first order. We'll just repeat the address now, buy.ver.so/Outspoken. Use the coupon code Outspoken for a big 15% off discount. The link is in the show notes. So, look, the big question that I've been speaking about this week, James Glancy, and I know you're just back from Conservative Party conference, so I wonder if people are talking about it there. Does Keir Starmer's personal life matter? Is it our business? Should we be concerned about the shape of his family? Should we be concerned if he was using Lord Ali's apartment because of troubles in his marriage? Is there a public interest in this? Where do you stand?
Well, I can tell you I did every day of the conference. I went to a variety of talks. Lord Ali came up more than any other name. Lord Ali's name came up more than Thatcher. He was the butt of jokes. I think the irony is, that first of all, my thoughts on the conference is that there was an overwhelming sense of relief to be out of government, because I think, the whole thing, it had the party had become ungovernable, unmanageable. And there was a sense of sort of confidence that they can rebuild. And everybody is just delighted at how badly Labour are doing. I mean, they seem to be worse than anything that the Conservatives managed when in government. Does it matter if Keir Starmer? I think, look, he started off the first 3 to 5 days of his leadership as Prime Minister. I thought he looked quite presidential. He looked the part. And that has literally all fallen apart. So yes, he has been brought up a lot at the conference, but I think no one can believe the hypocrisy of these people, how they've come in, talking about their working class roots, talking about a new type of government, how they're going to do things differently. And it turns out, unbelievably, they are worse than the Conservatives of the early 90s. The sleaze, the corruption is unbelievable. As for this latest story about his personal life, I think, the Conservatives should probably keep quiet on that one, because Boris certainly had an interesting personal life. But it does play into the fact that Keir Starmer is fundamentally a totally untrustworthy individual and is completely unfit to be our Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, the point that Guido Fawkes boss Paul Staines was making to me yesterday, James, is that if Keir Starmer has been lying to his wife, doesn't that also mean he will lie to the country? And in fact, we have seen lots of evidence that he lied during the election campaign.
I mean, that's a difficult one to say, because you know what Westminster's like with affairs. It's a pretty common thing. But does he lie? Is he dishonest? I mean, there is absolutely no doubt this is a dishonest man. But I think what's more frightening is the lack of transparency in the Labour manifesto telling us what they plan to do in government. And that's either because they didn't know, or they've had plans to do things to Britain that they want to do, but they couldn't face telling the electorate. And that, to me, is the most terrifying aspect of having over 4 years of a Labour government with a massive majority, with someone that we know we can't trust, that is already surrounded by scandal and is already giving up British interests.
I think you are absolutely right, James, to talk about the issue of hypocrisy, because to me, that's what this is all about. And I'll be very clear again. I think I should emphasize it. I actually don't give a damn who Keir Starmer was sleeping with. I don't give a damn if politicians have love childs. That is not of interest to me. But I do care about hypocrisy. And I do care about lies. And the problem is, James, we had these sanctimonious shadow ministers for years describing Boris Johnson as disgusting because of his personal life, going for Boris's marriage, targeting his wife. So I believe they have changed the tenor of politics in this country. Because to say now, like Rebecca Reed, the left-wing hardliner, said on GB News today, which I played in my judge yesterday, oh, wasn't it terrible that we got rid of so many prime ministers? And don't we now all of a sudden have to support Keir Starmer even if he does really bad things? I'm sorry, no. No, we don't. You change the rules. You change the game. We are playing by your rules now.
Yeah, I mean, the problem. I mean, let's just go to this one with Angela Rayner. I think she was unfairly criticised for being an Ibiza, having fun, doing what people in their personal lives, politicians need. We need normal people. I think it's great to see out there. I love going to Ibiza. I love clubbing. I don't pretend to be don't pretend to be working class. She is whatever she is. But at the same time, not many working class get freebies paid for by international organizations to go to Ibiza. She was probably on a very nice table in a VIP location worth hundreds of pounds, clearly. That isn't what working class people do. So I think the scandal here is the fact that she's taken a freebie and then she's claiming, oh, but I've got working class roots. That's why I like to dance. It's just, they are so unstraight. If you're gonna go to Ibiza, pay for it. If you want a nice suit and you've had a very well-paid job, as Keir Starmer has all his life, pay for it. You don't need your glasses paid for. And that is the rank hypocrisy of people that call themselves working class, say they represent the interests of the worker. They absolutely do not.
Well, I just have a little message to Angela Rayner today, James. You ain't working class anymore, honey. If you're taking an £856 freebie to be on an Ibiza nightclub stage, you're not working class. Stop the act. You're an out-and-out champagne socialist. And what I thought was particularly despicable is she covered up the fact that she had received that for free during all of those interviews where it was woe is me. And the problem is, James, they always go back to identity politics, don't they? So anytime Angela Rayner is criticised for anything, it's because she's working class. Anytime Rachel Thieves is criticised for anything, it's because she's a woman. Anytime David Lammy is criticised for anything, it's because he's black. I'm sick of the identity politics. I really am.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the most grotesque things to take over Britain. One of my historic heroes is Martin Luther King, and I think he said one of the most important quotes in history, that people should be judged on the content and the personality, not the color of their skin. And that has been all thrown away. Everything he's fought for has been thrown away by woke race identity politics. It is absolutely disgusting. I think what is fair though, on the sort of Keir Starmer's expenses and freebies scandal, is I do think the Prime Minister of either party should be allowed to attend a box at sporting events. And the reason I say this, you can't have the Prime Minister in the stands. But I think what's staggering is the quantity of freebies is accepted. He's number one in the Commons. It's unbelievable.
Look, the thing is, again, to me, it's just the fact that he was constantly attacking the Conservative Party when they were in government for cronyism and for being too close and for being captured. And let's be honest, that is exactly what this guy is. That is exactly what he is all about. And I think the great thing is that it's been exposed so quickly. We see what they like. We see what they're really all about. But look, there's going to be a strong opposition soon, because we have Nigel Farage, who I think is doing absolutely brilliant things. I'm interested in your take on him shortly. But first, you have just been at the Conservative conference where there has been this big row breaking out between one of the frontrunners, Robert Jenrick, and the Reform UK leader. So here's Robert Jenrick's pitch from conference.
The country needs a leader. Instead, with Starmer, we've got an undertaker. And what about the cabinet? What about our new cabinet? Well, Rachel Reeves, as wooden as Pinocchio, and only barely more honest. And then we've got Ed Miliband. Whoever tells you the grown-ups are back in charge, look at Ed Miliband. A Wallace missing his grommet. And then, there's David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary. Living proof that there is a more annoying LBC presenter than James O'Brien.
I love this, James. I love this. This is what we need. I'm not in the cleverly camp of, let's go back to being the adults in the room and we've got to fight from the centre. No, this is what I want. I think this is where the Conservatives can have some success against Reform UK. But Nigel, by the way, has written a new article in the Daily Telegraph. This is what he said. Reform is here to stay. The Tories had their chance and they blew it. All talk of whether a future deal between me and the Conservatives can be done is irrelevant. It's not even on my agenda. I simply don't trust them. So before I get to the Conservative leadership contest specifically, would you support Nigel Farage as Prime Minister?
So Nigel Farage is a friend of mine. He's done a huge service to this country, I believe, in fighting to get our democracy back, our independence back. You know, this is one of the things that the Labour government gave away with all those with all the 19 all the acts that came through since Maastricht, all the treaties. That's what I was looking for. Treaty of Lisbon, Treaty of Amsterdam, giving away our sovereignty to the EU, and he's been one of the things. It's almost solely down to him that we've regained our sovereignty. So I am tremendously supportive of him, and as you know, as a Brexit Party MEP, and I served alongside him, so he is a good friend. My concern about having two parties on the right is that splitting the vote that we saw has allowed, in the last election, Labour and Lib Dems to gain huge numbers of seats at the expense of good members of Parliament. Andrew Jenkins, Jacob Rees-Mogg, all of those fell victim to that split. So I'm not supportive of a split on the right, and I don't like to see the animosity breaking out between the Conservatives and Reform. Now, I completely understand Nigel Farage's point of just to the extent to which the Conservatives broke manifesto pledges, especially on immigration, which, you know, is absolutely disgraceful. But there needs to be conciliation. And I think, look, talk of any deals right now, it's too early. We're in 2024. The next election is not going to be before 2028. But ruling them out now is a mistake by Reform and Farage, and it would be a mistake by the Conservative Party. I am a patriot. I served in the British military. I love this country. And whatever happens, we have to get Labour and Lib Dems, because there could be a Labour coalition, Labour-Lib Dem coalition in the future. We have to keep them away. We have to contain them to a 4 to 5 year government and never let them back in or keep them out as power for as long as possible. So I'm in favour of any way that the right can get them out of power and get back into power. And that's what I will be saying to Nigel, and it's what I say to the Conservative Party. Don't rule anything out yet. It's too early to do that. Let's fight to let's hold the government to account, and let's fight to unite the right.
I understand that. I do. Okay. Who are you backing then to be Conservative Party leader?
Yeah. So look, I am really, really impressed by the Robert Jenrick campaign. Yes. You know, I've studied everybody. I'm particularly close friends. I'm close friends with Tom Tugendhat. I served with him as a soldier in Afghanistan. He's a friend of mine. He asked me to do some work with him. But if I strip this back, friendships aside, from a political point of view, I'm very impressed by the Jenrick campaign, because he has clearly understood the problem that he had in government, and he recognises the solutions that need to come forward. And what really appealed to me is this concept of a Great Reform Act. I've always said that we need a 1997 commission. We need to look at every single act, every single treaty, every single piece of power that was given away from Parliament by the Labour government. And we need to look at either repealing it or finding a way of returning sovereignty to Parliament. And that goes right the way up to the Equality Act, which has created a lot of this diversity, DEI problems, that business, this over-regulation, and this, as you talked about earlier, divisive identity politics. We need to get rid of so much damage done by the Labour government. Robert Jenrick is the one talking about a Great Reform Act, leaving the ECHR, leaving the Human Rights Act, which is preventing us controlling our borders. You know, he's talking about really difficult questions that most people are shying away from. He's talking about next to net zero immigration or into the low tens of thousands. He's the first person talking about deportations of people that want to do us harm, that are people that are here illegally. These are things that people have been Conservatives being afraid to speak about, and it's legitimate to look at, to have borders. It's legitimate to deport people that are here illegally, and he's unafraid to talk about these issues. And I think that's really going to appeal to reform voters, and I think it's going to appeal to a lot of people in the Conservative Party, Conservative voters that stayed at home or felt let down by the state of immigration in this country.
No, I think that's a good call. If I was voting for it, I would be voting for Jenrick too. And I think the media totally misunderstands the Tory membership. Lots of talk that Badenoch's going to walk it if she gets down to the final two, or that Cleverly has a chance. I would stake my reputation, and maybe that's a dangerous thing, on saying that whether it's Jenrick versus Badenoch or Jenrick versus Cleverly, Jenrick wins and becomes the leader of the opposition.
I think it's going to be down to those two. I mean, I know Cleverly had a good conference. He was very funny. Genuinely funny in his speech, and I loved it. I love this joke about being in the Territorial Army and then he thought he was about to be deployed overseas, and he got deployed to Luton, of which someone pointed out that Luton is probably more dangerous than Iraq now because of so many people have been imported. You know,
sad but true.
It is, yeah. So. But I think, you know, I was looking. I have done this. I've taken a non-emotional look at this and looked at, you know, Jenrick's policy. That he really genuinely is talking about a much smaller state, lower taxes, all Conservatives, all proper back to basics conservatism, which has been completely lost from the last few Conservative governments. One thing I did note, I was looking at the back of Jeremy Hunt's head, and all the candidates were talking about how disgraceful the rising corporation tax was, and he was just sort of sat there in silence as
exactly.
Budgets were
and I'm sorry, that's why people aren't that interested in this race. That's why I think Reform UK with 5 MPs only has the momentum, but fascinating insight on it all the same. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are. You can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and I've put some of the links in the show notes below this video. Keep watching our Outspoken clips to support this independent news venture with no spin, no bias, and no censorship, unlike the MSM. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.